I chose as my final project to interview Qing. She is 76 years old and came to the United States from China in 1962. We held the interview in her home. She graciously served me tea with rosebuds that she brought back from her last trip to Hong Kong. Her home was decorated with many Chinese items, including this royal scroll from the Emperor Changshu pictured here. She was of royal Chinese lineage. Both her parents were from wealthy elite families in Nanjing. She wrote a biography of her father, which gave me a vivid picture of her Chinese heritage and her early childhood. She lived her early childhood years in the midst of war around Shanghai, China. In 1949, the family fled to Hong Kong when the communists took over. So Qing's first immigrant experiences were in Hong Kong. She later painted this child, and when I first saw it, I imagined her as an immigrant. Her family remained in Hong Kong because they couldn't return to Shanghai due to fear of political persecution, as her father had a notable role in the Chinese military against the communists, and they were from the elite class. She spoke English in school in Hong Kong, and she wanted to come to the U.S. to college, but she couldn't get a U.S. student visa, so she went to Australia and received a degree in architecture. After she graduated, she applied once more to the U.S. and received a student visa to study interior design at the University of Houston. My first important piece of learning was that I had stereotypes. Qing was a little like people today who are refugees. Her family was fleeing war and political persecution. Yet when people speak of a refugee coming to the U.S. due to war or persecution, I picture a poor, desperate, needy person and someone who will have a very difficult time adjusting. Qing said, I did not experience difficulties when I arrived because I was already fluent in English. I had been to Australia first, and I stayed with my sister and brother-in-law in Houston. There was a large Chinese community in the school and in Houston, and all my friends were in that community. So there were no prejudices against me. We were all Chinese. I learned that each person has their own story, and in working with immigrants, I need to have an open posture to whatever that story may be. I also learned that knowing something of the other person's culture and history can be helpful for me to understand them. Qing and I talked in depth about the differences in the Chinese and United States cultures. One phrase summed it up. Chinese pays more attention to what's inside a person, and Western the outside. She identified parts of my own culture that I was not proud of, like materialism. When she first came, she said I played copycat to the people around me. Anything that pleased my eye, I would buy. I admired parts of her culture. She often spoke of character and how important instilling character into children was. She said I was taught to be kind, good, act with charity, have integrity, not to lie, and to follow the family rules. The last thing I will share has to do with intersectionality. Sociologist Patricia Hill Collins explained this term in our text. Qing experienced much more discrimination and even abuse because of her being a woman than being Chinese. At work, she was the only woman architect in a firm of 300 men and was often assumed to be a secretary. At home, her Chinese heritage of women being deferential and obedient were not helpful to her when her husband became abusive. In her Chinese culture, divorce was a disgrace to the family. So while being an Asian immigrant was not as difficult for her, navigating life as a woman in a world where men dominated was very challenging. I enjoyed hearing Qing's story, reading her father's biography, learning more of Chinese history and culture, and applying the concepts we learned this semester in this final project. Thank you.